Hey, welcome back, guys. All right, sorry, I had to make sure I got the whole deck. I left a couple cards behind. So let's get into this. We'll take a look at whatever the signs and symbols are, along with whatever the actual storyline may be. We start with the Four of Fire and the High Priest in the reverse. Now, let me show these both upright. So first off, my impression, because it's actually Four of Wands, somebody's story is either not done or hasn't even begun being written. And this could be the story of love, the story of a relationship. This feels like somebody's got to maybe start a whole new page because something has recently come to an energy of closure, right? We see somebody's glove has come off. I don't know if somebody was like, I'm picturing honestly somebody in like a glove, specifically just like one work glove. If you're scrubbing the tile in the bathroom or something, you may be a strong right-handed person or something, so you only need the one glove on because the other hand is, holding the spray bottle or something. But I'm picturing somebody who's been scrubbing, working hard at something. We also have like a little beverage here, I don't know, that to me looks like whiskey or something. But it just comes across like, okay, instead of saying the gloves are off, because I don't see this as like hostile, I see it as a lot of the work is done. I see it as a completion. However, this card was in the reverse. And I'm looking at it more like I'm done writing a particular story about, again, possibly love. This could be somebody who's, they wrote a whole huge manuscript, a whole huge life story, but it's done now. And now it's time for a new one. This feels like somebody who could be divorced and actually ready for new love. Now, this particular card, this is the High Priest, which normally, there's High Priestess and then there's High Priest. High Priest is normally considered to be the Hierophant, which should be card 5 in the Major Arcana. This is not a standard deck, and this is card 10, which would normally be the Wheel of Fortune. So we have kind of an interesting, almost like duality to this card in the way I tend to look at it. Keep in mind, this was also in the reverse. We have somebody who is, if it's High Priest or Hierophant or the Wheel of Fortune, we're talking either about divine timing, or we're talking about somebody's connection to the divine, or we're talking about somebody who is no longer following a particular contract. And that is more the interpretation I'm getting off of this. A contract could have been like maybe a dogmatic way to like follow the rules or regulations. Somebody could have said, oh, if you get married, then you stay married to that one person forever. And although that would of course be ideal, right? We're pledging something, of course, you take something that serious with the gravitas that it would be expected to, but we don't always get to follow through with that initial promise. Sometimes life changes, sometimes we grow out of connections, grow beyond connections. This keeps feeling like somebody who's changed their opinion about even feeling a tremendous amount of sorrow over the ending of a relationship. It's like, you know what? It's not the relationship that I could possibly have remained in. I actually did complete the journey. Maybe it didn't last forever, but I did complete the journey, and it's over now with that particular person. This keeps feeling like a divorce to me, and someone who's coming to terms, possibly a masculine who's coming to terms with a divorce. We have philosophy. We definitely have a masculine who is, they're wiser because of this experience. They're young and old at the same time. They are someone who has had to find a philosophical view. By the way, they could be like a Libra or Libra cusper. I just say that because we have the Libra scales back there. But there's like, they've pondered heavily the question of, was it right for me to leave, or should I have stayed? But then if I stay and it's miserable, how is that doing right by me? It feels like they were caught in that philosophical quandary of, when you make a pledge, aren't you supposed to stick with it? Yes, but what if the elements that you pledged to are no longer there? Then doesn't that negate what the pledge was in the first place? It feels like, because this can be a card of marriage. This can be a card of, we wrote this huge life story together, but then we started writing it, and we didn't have any of the same, characters anymore. The whole plot shifted. And so how is it that I pledged to something, but when that something changes entirely, when the whole plot is different? It would be like if you said, you know, let's say a actor was in a film and they had a character that they played, but then over time they completely change everything about the film. Maybe it was a science fiction film originally, and now it's become a drama. And after that, it becomes a full on slapstick comedy. And it's like, okay, wait a second, this was, I don't know, maybe I don't want to be in this series anymore because it's evolved so differently than the project I loved when I started. I didn't know it was going to be slapstick comedy. I really liked the hardcore sci-fi aspect with no comedy in it. It could just be that, like, what do you do when the whole plot changes? When the whole purpose of everything changes? Well, I think that this character, we're going to say this masculine, has come to the conclusion, because I feel like they were really mourning or really struggling with the legitimacy of letting go of something that they had really pledged to follow through on. But they had to take a more philosophical viewpoint. And yes, they're also saying the other thing that changed might not just have been the plot, but maybe I changed as well. I matured. Maybe I was, not the person then that I am today. Maybe the person that I am today would never have agreed to something. I read things differently these days. We have the Duchess. I definitely feel like this is a story of I'm going to say, a divine masculine contemplating a very serious relationship of his life that has come to a close. And this is him, pondering it. Maybe this is, like a date where, his memory goes back to, like, oh, this was the anniversary of our marriage, or this was the, a specifically important time for us. And that's why I'm thinking so heavily about it. But I think he's thinking about it in a sense of closure, while still, thinking good thoughts of whomever. Now, that Duchess could represent an empress that he was married to, or could represent his mother figure, who may have been like, you stay in a connection, you don't exit. We have the Mayoress of Water, and we have the full moon upright. No, so I'm going to read it this way. I do feel like he has maybe a strong mother figure, somebody who would have preferred him to maintain a long-term commitment. Don't get a divorce, stay in it no matter what. However, he's like, she doesn't know because she wasn't in the situation with us. You can't, even a well-meaning and really wise individual that I have great love and respect for, they are not privy to the day-to-day of why it didn't work for us. This Mayoress of Water, in his mind, he's saying, she wasn't in love with me. He may have come to the conclusion, slowly but surely over time, that either the person he was married to, things shifted and changed. He's like, she's not in love with the person that I actually grew into. And maybe he's also like, she grew also into a person, and while we can care about each other, maybe we're not madly in love. I mean, this talks about, like, there is still emotion, but it's not maybe the kind of love story that would satisfy either of them. That's the way I would look at that. I mean, even here, we see him saying, the person I was married to, a Queen of Cups, she is a loving person. She is intelligent. She is wonderful. She has so many great attributes. But she too has pondered the philosophical question of, if the context of us being together has changed so much, why are we staying together? And I feel like he's looking at this saying, either this outside energy, this mother figure, she's not understanding or not privy to the situation between myself and the person that I'm, no longer with. And that's okay. Nobody is supposed to be in our connection. It's between the two of us. It's between us making decisions about what works and what doesn't for us. I feel like he may like have spent time literally reading up on like philosophers. He could just be somebody who does some pretty deep thinking. He clearly admires, respects, and appreciates the feminines of his life, even one that he is saying, she's not in love with me. We've changed, even if we still care about each other. But, we wouldn't have guessed that our hearts wouldn't be in this anymore. It just feels like he's very much, instead of feeling sad about something, and he's not trying to excuse it or rationalize it, he's looking at it from the different perspectives and with, I would say, great like depth. And if anything, I think that this is alleviating a lot of both guilt, pain. There's no feeling of like, oh, we failed at this. He's not taking it on as a feeling of failure. He's really able to see a connection that has not worked out as not sad, but instead like maybe we got the fullest experience that we could have had, and now of course we move forward. That's okay. That's not a terrible thing, even if other people won't understand why, or a mother figure won't understand. Yeah, with the 3 of Wands, he is, I think, excited to be thinking about his future. He may have a very good idea of what he wants his future to look like, how he wants to construct it. In his mind, he may be quite cerebral and quite, he sees the different building blocks of how he'd like to rebuild his life. This definitely feels like a divine masculine who is absolutely not going back to an ex, even if there's pressure on him from a family member to do so. Let's ask about the Mayoress of Water. White Stag sideways. See, she also is like, yeah, it would have been great if this could have been a situation that was so spiritual and it was, we stayed together forever. But what if our spiritual bond continues? I loved this person. I loved him. I'll always love him to a certain extent. But this is the Temple of Artemis. And I kind of feel like for her, it's like maybe our spiritual connection was already complete. And now I need to go on the hunt for something else, somebody else who matches me in a more tangible way at this point in my life. She is not brokenhearted. She is not in a place of sorrow. She may be somebody, she could be really great with archery, or she could be somebody who's quite spiritual herself, religious, spiritual. She could have strong convictions. And I think that's what we're seeing here is 2 people have been like their convictions have kind of been tested a little bit, because this isn't the way they thought it was going to go. This isn't what they intended when they first probably, got into a long-term relationship. But I think to their credit, they both are like mature enough to say, we maybe fulfilled what we were supposed to do together, or as far as we could go together. And we did it with, full commitment, which is very admirable. But now is a time spiritually, emotionally, we're ready to detach from each other, not because we don't like each other, we don't hate each other, we have none of that negativity, but we also are not going to continue to grow together. And there's like this spiritual acceptance, philosophical acceptance of that. For them, the only person who's struggling seems to be the Duchess. Maybe because the Duchess is like, but I don't get it, you two are such good friends, why are you not just still together? They would make each other miserable together. And the Duchess doesn't understand that. They're both hungry for other connections. Okay, so they both need to move on at this point. Look, I don't see the Duchess as being, commanding or demanding. I think if anything, she's like trying to give sound advice. If you're still friends with an ex to where you guys could be that comfortable, why are you not just together? You realize that's a rarity to be, so comfortable with each other, have so much history. Why would you, move on from that? Are you sure you're making the right decisions? I feel like she was bringing things up that were probably valid. But what I think, certainly for him, for our masculine in this story, he's saying she doesn't see the full picture. There's too much that I'm not going to explain to her, but there's things that, are frankly none of her business, of course, about the state of my heart and the fact that I can love the person I was once married to and also not be in love with them anymore, and vice versa. But I don't need to explain any more of that to the Duchess. And it just feels like this is a very, again, very respectful, um, like parting of ways. Can we go back over to what he's intending? By the way, somebody could have like blocks, children's blocks. Maybe they had kids together. Maybe he's seeing children's blocks, or this is just the way his brain puts things together. He could like to build things. He could like to stack things, but without realizing it, he may have always liked playing with blocks as a kid. But it could be that every block for him in his brain actually represents something different. Like, I don't know if people know how his brain works. He's a deep thinker, and I don't know if other people understand that about him, that he wasn't ever just playing with blocks or Legos. Those represented something different to him. We have artisan. Oh, that makes sense that I'm talking about him like that, because he has definitely an artistic and philosophical viewpoint. So with this being sideways, and I'm asking, what is he thinking about for his future? He's either thinking about a more artistic path he'd like to take, or he may be thinking about an artist that he's drawn to. There could be a Leo on the horizon for him. This is a card of fortitude. There may be a feminine that is very brave, that he thinks a great deal about. This could be somebody, yes, he could be in love with somebody else, but it's kind of like a pure love. Geometry, there's those blocks again. I do think that he has compartmentalized, because he's needed to either address the ending of a marriage properly, fully and completely before planning, how he's building his next future. And I think it's because it's like he needed things to be quite organized and structured so that he could also arrange it to where he could bring a new person into his life. I do think he's got emotions for somebody that he views as like very admirable, very long-term partner. This is definitely someone that he views as like, she's in like silver armor, a mayoress of earth. This is somebody he's either going to travel to go see, or it's the Queen of Pentacles. It's someone that he sees as the person he's maybe meant to be with, because we've got all the constellations here on this astrolabe behind her, and we've got the globe, and it's like she's where I want to build and grow. She's the person that he literally, I'm not saying that he's divorcing or chose to divorce because he wants her instead. He chose to divorce first, and there's like a finality to that, and a comfort zone in letting it go, and then allowing himself to start picture himself in this other connection, which is one that he already wants. It's one that he's like, now he's able to admit it to himself, like, I have a mayoress of earth that I want to be with. What about his ex? 10 of Cups. She has somebody else that she'd like to be with also. She has a whole different, actually, she may not be choosing another partner. She may be choosing a lifestyle. She might want to be single and enjoy animals, and enjoy, maybe going out for high tea, maybe partying a bit more, whatever her version is. He wants long-term partnership, like really long-term partnership. He's not scared off of the concept of marriage at all. He's just done with the previous connection because the two of them grew in different directions. Look, his previous partner is very content with parting ways with him, and in fact will be happier, but she may want more of a star-studded life, and he wants a partner to like stay with, build with, grow with. So he's, if anything, he's more committed than ever to the idea of long-term partnership, but with the right partner this time, or the partner that he can see growing in the next chapter with. He does want loyalty. He does want permanency. That's super important. And he's attracted to somebody who's very opposite the energy of his previous partner. So anyway, I'm going to leave this here. By the way, the woman that he's in love with could look terrific in green. She may have a checkered jacket or coat on as well. She may wear more silver jewelry than gold. She doesn't have to be feminine. It's just how she's shown up here. But thank you guys for hanging out. Thanks for giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. Bye.